Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's virtual office hour, which is focused on Innovation Hub for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility and Registered Apprenticeship. My name is Cassandra McGee. I'm a Senior Program Manager of JFF, and we are glad that you chose to join us today. This project is funded in part by the U.S. Department of Labor through the Youth Apprenticeship Intermediaries Project, and this session will be recorded. So as a reminder, please ensure that your phone line is muted if you are not the primary speaker. However, we always welcome your input, which you can share via the chat box or live during our question and answer section. So with that being stated, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Andrea Messing-Matthew, who will be facilitating today's discussion. Andrea?
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Our virtual office hours are part of our Youth Apprenticeship Work series. This is an attempt to bring us all together as practitioners across the field to have a conversation. As we have dove into this virtual world, I think it's become difficult for us to continue to have these conversations, and this is a space where we can do that. And I'm excited to have my colleague Josh Johnson here today, who will be able to share with us some of the new work that's happening at JFF and some of the hopes in which this might reach across the field. So Josh, I'll pass it to you.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Just getting my setup here all nice and cozy for me so I can kind of truck on through. And as I understand, Andrea, you are helping out with clicking through the slides, correct?
I think Cassandra is helping to drive the bus. I'm just here to ask some good questions.
Oh, that's good. All right. I just want to make sure who I know. So when I just say next, that just go into the next slide. So awesome. Well, thank you again for inviting me to join in on these this virtual hour. Really excited to be a part of it and to have a conversation. And hopefully we do get some drive some really good questions. As was stated, I am the director for the Innovation Hub for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility and Registered Apprenticeship. My background, if you would like to click to the next slide there, I'll kind of have a little bit of my background. I am the former state director of Wisconsin Apprenticeship, where I was in charge of registered apprenticeship, youth apprenticeship, and certified pre-apprenticeship programming in the state of Wisconsin. I came to JFF in October of last year, where I became a director within the Center for Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning. And my focus is as the director of the Innovation Hub for DEIA in registered apprenticeship. Next slide, please. So the question, right? What is this all about, right? Why? When we think about apprenticeship, why? Well, apprenticeship is a proven industry-driven career pathway where employers can develop their future workforce and workers can get critical experience through paid and credential programmings. If you want to click the slide two more times, it's going to pull up some, thank you. So when we think about apprenticeship, most people, at least in my career, most people have always confused apprenticeships with internships. And they always think about the fact that, well, oh yeah, I love offering apprenticeships to people. You know, if they work out, you know, we have them in for a semester, and if they work out, that's great. Then we'll sign them on and they can keep working here. And I've always had to correct people and say, well, no, you're talking about an internship. In an apprenticeship, we're talking about a workforce program where from the first day you are working at that employer, right? And so what's the value of that? What does that look like? Well, here, the employers, the value, obviously 92% of the apprentices retain employment after program completion. That's where some people get it confused with thinking about an internship. When we're talking 92% of apprentices, what that means is once they graduate their apprenticeship program, they are journey workers. 92% of them, they retain that employment after they complete that apprenticeship program at that employer, which is tremendous amount of buy-in, obviously from the apprentice as well as from the employer, because they're being able to build that workforce, that internal workforce. We look over at the apprentice side, you know, we talk about the why. Well, $72,000 average starting wage after completion of an apprenticeship program. Apprenticeship programs range from 1 year to 5 years. Just all depends where you are, you know, what occupation it is, you know, whether it's one of the new non-traditional occupations that have been budding over the past few years, or if it's one of the tried and true construction and manufacturing type occupations that have been around for since 1911 in Wisconsin and 1937 across the country. Next slide, please. So when we talk about the why, and this is where, as I'm kind of setting the stage here of the work that we're doing. We talk about the why, and we talk about apprenticeships diversity problem. And when we talk about apprenticeships diversity problem, we have to be very honest with ourselves about what's going on and how it truly looks. And apprenticeship is often touted for its strong outcomes, right? That's just what it is. Right? 92%. We just talked about it. 92% for employers, $72,000 for the apprentices. But when we start to look at the data shows us how, while it has very strong outcomes, it is a truly inequitable system. And when we think about how to address that, many times, and I've been in these conversations, many times employers have always said, well, I don't know where to find individuals. I don't know where to recruit a diverse workforce. And they don't want to work here. And when we have those conversations with them, we really have to explain the fact of, in your business, however your business model is set up, if you're bringing individuals in to work, just coming in entry level positions, are you bringing in a diverse workforce in that nature that will have the opportunity to go into your registered apprenticeship programs? And many times they aren't. Many times they are recruiting from their internal workforce, and their internal workforce just is not diverse. But when we look at it, this comes from a 2015, a 2015 article that talks about, many women and people of color face those low enrollment rates within the programs, and they're concentrated in lower paying occupations, the occupational segregation, right? As we continue to go on with the DEIA work that we're doing, we're going to start to tackle some of those things, such as occupational segregation, where they're bringing in people of color or underserved communities to work in these lower level apprenticeship programs, and they're not giving them a chance to grow. They're completing, at $13 an hour, which everybody on this call knows that those are not family sustaining wages. Next slide, please. So I just threw two slides in here. As I talked about registered apprenticeship, I want to quickly talk about youth apprenticeship, and I want to focus on one of the pillars here for the principles of a high quality youth apprenticeship program. Obviously, career oriented, equitable, portable, adaptable, and accountable. But I want to focus on just one, just for the sake of the time that we have. I just want to focus on one, and that's equitable. So the learning is accessible to every student with targeted supports. When we think about in Wisconsin, as the state director in Wisconsin, I looked at how we could build intentional pathways and pipelines from youth apprenticeship into registered apprenticeship. And a big part of that was driven by the equity that was already embedded in the youth apprenticeship program in the state of Wisconsin. We look at many of the career clusters that they had, and in healthcare, predominantly young women, right? There were other occupational areas, predominantly students of color. So when you're looking at it, you're saying, wow, youth apprenticeship is getting this broad swath of participation, but we haven't created this funnel to get that broad swath into registered apprenticeship. Next slide, please. So when we look at it, the YA program as they designed, or as they are designed, we think about it, and many of you on this call already know this, and I just threw this in here because this is really a part of what we're doing, what we're trying to drive. It's designed to address and acknowledge those equity challenges, and that's what in Wisconsin they did as well. It's looked at how can we create that funnel into a registered apprenticeship, and then expanding the opportunity and lead to improved education and employment outcomes. The apprenticeship system or the youth apprenticeship system, as it's built, and it's different across the country, but it all has one goal in mind, and that's to create a positive employment outcome for the youth participating, whether they're 16, whether they're 17, whether they're, for some that go 16 to 24, whether they're in their early 20s. The goal is to create that positive employment outcome. Next slide, please. So now it brings us to what we're doing. I just kind of set the stage a little bit about registered apprenticeship, youth apprenticeship, but obviously there's a need, and there is a strong need to help create diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in the registered apprenticeship system. And why is that important? Well, as you see the pillars for the pre-apprenticeship, and equitable being one, you see the opportunity to start to create family sustaining careers for young men and women as early as high school and as late as however late it is that you decide you want to change your career and go into something different. And what USDOL identified is that they wanted to bring on a partner who had very strong ties to diversity and inclusion and economic mobility, and that's where JFF entered the fray. And we were awarded $13 million from the Department of Labor. We are one of the 4 registered apprenticeship technical assistant center of excellence, national centers of excellence. And our focus truly is diversity and inclusion. As you see in our name, we obviously, over the past 4 months, we've been innovative with our name, and that's how we become internally and externally known a national innovation hub for diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in RA, registered apprenticeship. Now, I show this slide just as kind of like the bare bones of what we're doing. But one thing, as we look at like the dates, like that's the period of performance for this cooperative agreement. From day one, when we started this, the Innovation Hub, we've thought about sustainability. We've thought about how we could create this that's going to go much farther past than June 30th of 2025, because we see the position that JFF can play within apprenticeship and helping with DEIA. But we also see where our partners and stakeholders, like many of you on the phone, or on the presentation today, where many of you can play a part in that as well and help us to continue to advance those efforts. Next slide, please. So as part of that, what we're looking to build is 3 different areas: system level, worker area, employer level. Right? The system level, we want to create a diverse apprenticeship ecosystem. We want to drive the policy. We want to create funding and get that partnership going as part of that national system. We really want to get that national system to talk the exact same way across the country, right? Many of you may not know, and many of you may know, when you think about registered apprenticeship, there's the SAA, state approving agencies, and there's the OA, the Office of Apprenticeship. Well, they're all under USDOL, Office of Apprenticeship, but they're either federal or state-run apprenticeship programs. We want to come into that system, and we want to make sure that that system is centered on the voice of the workers. We want to change how some things are being done where it's not driven by the workers, and we want to do that so that we can drive those successful outcomes. Once again, the worker level, we look at those apprenticeship opportunities and the family sustaining wages. We want opportunity there for professional growth for those underserved communities. One of the things that I focused on as a former state director was there's many access points into the world of registered apprenticeship, but for people of color or individuals from underserved communities, there's bushes in front of those doors. And then even if you get through the bushes, the door is locked and they don't have the key. So we want to create those visible opportunities, and we want to unlock those doors so that people from underserved communities have the ability to come into registered apprenticeship and to access the promise that apprenticeship brings of family sustaining careers with very good wages. And then lastly, employers. We want to help employers and support employers build those diverse recruitment pipelines. That's where youth apprenticeship plays in. That's where pre-apprenticeship plays in. That's where tapping into your local community-based organization, so on and so forth. We want to help them by giving them promising practices and helping to support the work that they're trying to do to create those diverse recruitment pipelines and help them engage those communities that they are, I'm saying this nicely, help engage those communities that have historically not been engaged by these employers to show them what it looks like to recruit and to retain the workers in those communities. Next slide, please. So here's the meat of what we're doing. Here's our vision. We envision a world where all Americans, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, ability, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, socioeconomic background, or location have equal access to registered apprenticeship and are able to achieve equitable outcomes that lead to career advancement and economic mobility. And the next slide is our mission. So as you think about that with our vision, we look at our mission. We want to drive change in the registered apprenticeship system to increase DEIA for populations that historically have not had access to the promise of apprenticeship. And we do this by removing barriers, supporting and enhancing employer efforts, and elevating promising promising and innovative practices. Now, our mission and vision are leading directly into our goals, which are on the next slide, please. And those goals are simple. And I say that tongue in cheek. They're simple, right? As we look at them, we're like, yeah, these are simple. But there's so much it's going to take for the system. And that means us, that means you all on the call, that means all of our employers across the country, all of our stakeholders interested in helping to advance registered apprenticeship and the DEIA work in registered apprenticeship. So the goals here: expand employer capacity to develop inclusive RA programs, engage new training providers in registered apprenticeship, and expand existing pre-apprenticeships or similar on-ramps. Broker and build partnerships across a wide range of stakeholders, from employers to CBOs. And then lastly, this is while all four are tremendously important, this last one really is the marriage of supply and demand. We need to drive growth through demand. We have to help our employers understand the importance to help them be able to compete locally, nationally, and globally. But we also have to educate and inform that supply side. We have to let them know where those access points are. We have to move the bushes out of the way. We have to unlock the doors so that they can get the chance to access the promise of apprenticeship, and building partnerships at the same time, and then providing quality technical assistance as we go along. It's funny, my former director, who in Wisconsin, the former state director of apprenticeship, she was the director for almost 30 years. She always said it's the chicken and the egg. So when we talk about driving growth through demand, through the employer side, we can drive as much growth as we want, but if there's no people to go work there in the apprenticeships, then we're trying to help them figure out where they are, right? And they're like, why do I need to do this? But then on the flip side, we can get as many people ready to go into a registered apprenticeship as we want. But if you don't have employers, then you just have a bunch of people waiting for an opportunity, and it becomes like a siphon down all the way, and it's that proverbial chicken. It's the chicken and the egg. Which one do we do? Do we help drive demand with employers, or do we help inform the supply side? So we're responsible within Innovation Hub is to look at how we can do that at the same time. And is that possible through promising practices? Next slide, please. And the work that we're doing is with 9 partners, 9 very good, distinct partners in the work that they're doing. Center for Minority Institutions, Chicago Women in the Trades. We have the Apprenticeship School at Newport News, Unidos US, 110, Intelligent Partnerships. As you can see, South Carolina Technical College System, and Donna Linhoff, who's an EEO attorney, who's helping us help the states continue to grow and continue to move forward with AAEEO operations. Next slide, please. So how can the DEIA Center support you? As you can see, we're as part of this cooperative agreement with USDOL, we're responsible for creating online resources, promising practices across the country, offering group technical assistance sessions with our partners. Our partners are tasked with that, providing those group technical assistance sessions, as well as helping to create promising practices and documents that can be shared, or something as simple as one-on-one coaching, having a phone call with somebody, whether it's me, somebody from my team, or one of our partners getting connected. Next slide, please. And then lastly, here's our call to action for any of the stakeholders or employers that are on this call, or information that can be shared out. Access our resources, request that technical assistance, and then lastly, sign the pledge. The DEIA pledge is a pledge that we are putting out there to the nation for apprenticeship employers as well as apprenticeship stakeholders who want to join a national network of apprenticeship employers and stakeholders who are serious about creating DEIA opportunities, who support DEIA opportunities, or who have been actively doing it within their organization or employer, and now they want to be recognized for that work that they're doing. Our goal is simple. As I said, you saw the 4 goals, but our goal really is simple, and that's really to change the way the national system operates, and as it pertains to equitable and inclusive registered apprenticeship programs. And we feel that a combination of our resources that we'll be creating with our partners, the technical assistance that we can provide to apprenticeship employers and stakeholders. And then lastly, that national network of stakeholders and employers that that an organization becomes when they sign that pledge. We feel like those are three foundational tools that will help us create that change. And then the last slide. Thank you, and I open up for any questions that anyone may have. I tried to keep it brief, tried to kind of go through there. It's a lot of information to digest, but there had to be certain slides in to kind of give more information on it. But I'm definitely open for any questions that anybody may have.
So I would love to actually hear from some of the folks that are on our call. I know there are folks from across the country who have been doing some of this work with their youth apprenticeship communities on expanding access and looking at the equitable pathways into youth apprenticeship. So I'm curious from the folks on the phone, what have been some of the ways in which youth apprenticeship have either helped or have been hindered by this new focus around diversity, equity, and inclusion? Are there ways in which your communities are starting to use language for youth apprenticeship differently? So I'll just start a little bit. One of the ways in which that we're seeing this is that employers were already struggling to find workers with the skills they needed. There's always been this disconnect between what's being taught in the classroom and what the workforce needs. There's that deep misalignment between those two needs. And I think that there is a broader recognition now that employers need to hire differently, but they're really apprehensive to hire new talent as they struggle to maintain their existing workforce. So I'm curious from our folks on the phone, are there ways in which youth apprenticeship is kind of changing that conversation a little bit? Are there ways in which young people are kind of are changing the way in which employers are hiring?
Well, I can just throw something out, in case anybody else, as they're thinking about an answer that that they want to throw out there. It's in my former role, as I saw the youth getting engaged. One of the conversations that we always had was about being intentional in creating that career pathway and showing what that career pathway looks like. And what that does is it creates an informed consumer, right? And it creates an informed youth who are prepared to go into a registered apprenticeship or to enter the workforce. And I think for the youth apprenticeship system, obviously to be successful is engaging those employers at that level, but then also engaging in youth at that level. They have to understand that this isn't just a program, quote unquote program that they're participating in, but this is the ability for them to enter the workforce in a capacity that is greater than if they just graduated from high school and then entered into the workforce. And I think that the way we market it and the way it's looked at obviously has to continue to be updated as we go along to engage those youth. But really engaging the youth and helping them understand that it's a career pathway. I'm just kind of throwing this out there is one of the key things that I'm sure many of the folks on the call would agree upon, is showing that there is this clear distinction of a pathway for you to go into a career in the workforce. And I know there was another question that we got that was any tips of engagement for out of school youth. And, some of the work I was just beginning to do before I came over to JFF was looking at out of school youth and how do you engage them at the point that they are at, with getting supportive services connected to them immediately. And many times people just say, and I use the example, people say, well, just get somebody a job and that's going to heal all their woes, right? And that's just, that doesn't work for an adult or for a youth. And we have to find a way to engage them with supportive services at that point so that they can overcome whatever it is, whatever barriers that are existing, but then also at the same time is getting employers to understand the value of engaging with the population of out of school youth and looking at them at much more as opportunity youth, right? Not looking at them as out of school. Well, out of school has this negative connotation, but looking at them as opportunity, an opportunity to bring somebody into your organization that may not think like everybody else in the organization, but can come in and bring they can bring they can bring a different viewpoint into the organization. But at the same time, it helps the employers to engage as well with those community-based organizations and build a relationship with them. So I don't have any specific tips of engagement, as that was one of the parts that I was just getting to prior to leaving Wisconsin. But I know that we did encourage employers to get fully engaged with community-based organizations and anyone who was connected to out-of-school youth.
Well, Andrea, can you hear me?
I can. Hi, Travis.
Hey, well, we just created a model for the early learning educational professional here in Miami-Dade County. So our community saw a need for early childhood educators as the pandemic took a hold on our economy. And as early learning centers closed down during the pandemic and didn't come back after the pandemic, there was a shortfall in early learning educators. So what we did was we partnered with the local college to create an apprenticeship for early learning, which is still in the process now. As a matter of fact, the application is up at the state level right now, getting approved. So once that program is approved, so what we did in the meantime was we created an internship with our out of school program with the local early learning education centers. And what that internship did was provide 240 hours of paid work experience, along with the 45-hour DCF training that's required for any early learning childhood educator to be employed in any center. And what we found was this program was probably one of our most successful programs, because what we did was we got the outcome we desired. We got the credential attainments, and we got the employment placements. Those participants were hired immediately after the internship. And once the pre-apprenticeship program is approved, then we'll move forward with creating a pre-apprenticeship program so that the pre-apprenticeship programs transition into the apprenticeship program. And what we find is we've gotten a great response from employers throughout the community. So my point is that the pandemic has created opportunities that weren't necessarily there before. And now that the iron is hot is when I think everybody should take advantage of those opportunities and kind of be creative and innovative in the kind of career pathways that we create. Because early learning childcare wasn't necessarily one of our industry focused career pathways here in Miami-Dade County, but the community had a need for it, and we responded to it, and it's been a very successful program. We have a waiting list of work sites of employers who want to participate in the program. Our participants, we provide them with the support services to help them make sure that they're able to complete the program, whether it be a transportation barrier or whether it be basic skills deficiency in order to help them pass the 45-hour DCF training, whatever the case may be. But it is a very successful program, a very successful model thus far, and it is expanding on a weekly basis as we work in partnership with the Early Learning Coalition here in South Florida.
Travis, that's super helpful, and thank you so much for sharing. I did post a report that was done through one of our other projects that focuses on opportunity youth, but you hit on something really important there, that COVID and the shutdowns and the way in which our communities have changed have caused a lot of problems, but they've also created some real opportunities for us to capitalize on. And I encourage us all to think about what are the ways we can be innovative in this space that we couldn't do before. Josh?
No, I was going to say, it's great. And ECE, Early Childhood Educator, is one that was launched in Wisconsin prior to me coming to JFF. And one of the things that we were very intentional about, and before I approved it to be an apprenticeship program, because the wages are very low. And we're talking $12, $13, maybe $14 an hour at the end of the apprenticeship. One of the things I encouraged the employers was to think about, okay, what is this? What is this stepping stone towards, right? We need ECE. We need those early childhood educators because of the shortage, right? To Travis's point, there's a tremendous shortage, but what's our plan and what are we doing as we move forward? What are we looking towards so that it's not we're just trying to get people into jobs, but we're trying to get them into sustainable careers or getting them to the point where they own their own early childhood education center, or they are, they work their way up the ladder into becoming a teacher, or whatever is the next step up or the next two steps up. So I love to hear that. I love to hear the response. As Andrea said, it's many things have happened. I won't say they're knee-jerk reactions, but COVID showed us a lot of deficiencies that we had in the system, and employers have responded tremendously to it, as well as practitioners have responded as well.
So I want to be respectful of time. This is such a great conversation. I think we could continue going. I will say in 2 weeks, there will be a 1-hour virtual office hour on early care occupations that's led by the Early Care Education Pathways to Success out of Oakland, California. I encourage all of you, we'll reach out back to all of you on that topic. But I want to thank Josh Johnson for coming in and talk to us, and thank everybody for joining us on the call today. And if there are any additional questions around the DEI Center, you can reach out to Josh. Josh, I don't know if you want to post your email into the chat box real quick,
Yep.
or you can reach directly out to Cassandra. And thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Great information. Thank you.
Thank you.